Ladies and gentlemen, we have an SBA legend sitting down with us. He needs no introduction. The one, the only, Bob Coleman. I met Bob when I was 23. I was very early in my SBA career, and by the time I was entering the industry, Bob was already a household name in the SBA world. Now, if you think about it, Bob is a pioneer in the content creation space. I found clips on YouTube dating back to 2009 talking about his take on what was happening with the Great Recession and the lack of access to capital for Main Street, and even an interview with Chris Riley, head of CIT Small Business Lending, and that was right after the bankruptcy, and I found all of it fascinating. It got me really excited about being able to come back and watch these episodes 10, 20, 30 years from now. So stay tuned. Bob and I talk a little shop, but I also learn about him, his background, his history, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope you do too. The SBA industry is rooted in banking, and banking is old school, but that's all starting to change. You hear people talk about AI, and it all sounds great, but let's be real. You and I don't know the first thing about AI, but Lumos does. Lumos is an analytics company that provides small business lenders with better tools that drive better decisions in a more efficient process. Take the Lumos Business Report, for example. This is going to completely revolutionize how deals get underwritten, starting with the BDO. The Lumos Business Report allows lenders to search for a specific business and in seconds access all kinds of information like a business overview, industry data, insights into competition, average pricing, even a predicted expected loss, all tailored around that specific loan request. Guys, we can finally make credit decisions using actual data. Stop using what you think you know about an industry to make credit decisions and start using the whole story. Let Lumos take your small business lending to the next level with cutting-edge analytics and AI by going to lumosdata.com and scheduling your demo today. Hey, Bob, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Ray. Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm interviewing you today. You know that, right? So like you're the guest, so it's a little different now.
Let me get rid of my notes then.
You know, when I came into the industry in 2011, you were already a household name in the SBA space. And this was probably around the time you were writing your book, Money, Money Everywhere, Not a Drop on Main Street, which I reread the other day. And it takes you right back to that time of the economy where access to capital was nowhere near as robust as it is today. And small business was hurting. And I mean, I almost felt a certain level of anger in your voice as you talked about the shuttered businesses in your town center. For those of us who are newer to this, can you give us a brief recap of that period?
Ray, my background is I'm a history major. I do have a degree in finance, but my undergrad is in history. And so I love going back and reading history and understanding, putting things into context. First of all, we forget the terror that we had just 4 years ago, or 3, whatever it was, with COVID. And those are very terrifying moments for not only small business, but for us personally and our families. And we had similar, not as stark, but during the Great Recession. Then the difference was a very more terror on the economic side. We were worried about jobs. Could we afford the house? We weren't worried about dying, but we certainly worried about the state of the country. And every day the hits kept on coming. Lehman Brothers failed. AIG, the government's proclamations. You knew it was serious when there was very little infighting on Capitol Hill. Everyone was coming together and saying, hey, we need to solve this problem. So very, very terrifying times that we lived through. And you were talking about credit. Well, there was no credit. Credit died up. The best way to describe that is my BDOs, half of them lost their jobs, SBA BDOs. The banks cut them out. The banks cut their training department. That's why we were able to establish training after that. So banks were cutting, they weren't making loans. housing values were dropping, the stock market was cratering, and it was tough times.
And you wrote the book about it, and you did a whole book tour. I was watching you on Fox Business, back in the archives, listening to all the interviews of what was going on, that must have been an exciting time to get on TV and talk to, the famous people on Fox Business and whatnot.
That was interesting. And again, by then things had settled down and we knew we were going to get out of it. So it was interesting learning curve and process. Absolutely.
Well, you were a pro, and
well, thank you. I don't know about that, but thank you for the compliment.
You did good, and writing a book is hard, and I know there's a lot of distractions at home. So you booked a ticket to Ireland, and 48 hours later, or 24 hours later, I think you wrote in the book, you were on a plane to go finish writing this book. Do you recall this? Like, what kind of memories does that bring back when you think of yourself being on that plane ride to Ireland?
Writing a book is difficult. I have nothing but the utmost respect for people who do it. As you said, there's a lot of distractions. It is similar to a painting. At what point in time is it finished? There was chapters that I was agonizing over until one day I had the realization, well, I don't need this chapter, and just cut it. I got on a plane to Ireland. I did it twice because it was expensive. My family and my friends were going, what are you doing? So I was extremely focused. I was spending a lot of money, and I got up and I wrote 12 hours a day, and I got it done.
In Ireland.
In December.
Oof. You quote in your book, and I love history, and I love, looking back, and, you wrote in the book, you could, at the time, like in 2007, and, I don't know if this was just an off the cuff remark or if you can actually do this, but basically you can have a couple $100,000 equity in your house, and 30 days later you're operating a Quiznos. And, because I am a history student like you, and history tends to repeat itself, I'm just curious, do you think we're returning to the credit standards of 2007 and the years prior?
That is a great question, and I don't know. I will answer it this way. I certainly hope not. I tend to be an optimist. Our politicians, despite what we read every day, are smart. Their staffs are smart. They have 99% of them have the best interest of their constituents at heart. And all I will say is they are doing things to make sure we don't have that type of situation again. Historically, we learned from the Great Depression and what not to do. We learned from the real estate crisis of the savings and loans in the 80s. We learned from the tech bubble of the earlier this century. So every crisis we learn more and more. And what I find fascinating is someone was the adult in the room and they said, why do we want to bail out corporate America? This time around, let's give the money to the people who employ people. 67% of all new jobs is from small business. 50% of us work for a small business. Let's give it to those people. And that's what they did. And Ray, I had the privilege of interviewing Marco Rubio, at the time the senator from Florida, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. And he said, if we didn't do PPP, there would have been unrest in the streets. We would have had a whole series of new problems. So to answer your question is, I don't think so. I think we're getting smarter. There's always new challenges and new problems. But the terror of the pandemic was absolutely horrid. But we were learning from each thing. And you know what? We're going to have similar types of challenges in the future. Severe economic terror type of incidents. But so far, the government is doing what it's supposed to do, and they're reacting appropriately.
Well,
now, that's not Pollyannish. I don't know what is.
Well, from the government standpoint, I think I agree with you, because the relief that happened at that time, like coming out of the 2008 debacle, like it was, what was the relief back then for small business? Was it like 90% guarantees and fee waivers from the SBA standpoint?
The relief was, as my book said, no, there was no relief. They relieved the banks. They gave money to banks to lend to small business under TARP. But as you said, it was still through the program. But the problem was credit was being constricted. And so while SBA said, hey, we'll increase the guarantees and do this. The regulators are saying, don't you dare make a loan to a small business. I love the great quote by the CEO of Bank of America at the time, Ken Lewis, and he said, our small business loan portfolio is a damn disaster. No bank was going to lend to small business. The hotel lending niche, you cannot get a hotel loan unless you had the SBA guarantee, and SBA wasn't lending. The lending was slashed because guess what? Hotel values were dropping like a rock, so the valuations were cratering, and all that equity that you had to support the loans in your house was gone as well.
Well, and I think the relief this time was with PPP a lot more focused on the small business. And I mean, I remember the seriousness of literally every day that Congress didn't get together on that. I was just sweating bullets because I was like, these businesses are going to close and never reopen.
And you have to give credit where credit is due. The Congress did an outstanding bipartisan job of putting it out there. SBA did an amazing job of getting it out that quickly. And the lenders were the ones who did the heavy work. And we all heard stories of spending the nights and working horrible hours to get it out. So it was definitely a team effort. And yeah, there's negative publicity, but we need to keep it into context. PPP frauds, we knew the fraud was going to be there. The people are going to jail. It's being handled. Yeah.
Well, what if I were to tell you, there's in the lending world, because I'm still a BDO, by trade during the days, that's what I do. So I know like there's banks that are pursuing this trend where we're lending money through the SBA 7A program to young people who are coming out of, MBA programs, and they're using investor money to buy businesses for millions of dollars. The investors don't PG, and the folks who are these young entrepreneurs who want to buy a business, they don't put a lot of their own money into it. There's 100% financing for CRE that's readily available. Everyone, I feel like, is using the IRS as a line of credit because you don't have to pay your taxes. You can just say, give me a payment plan. Is this what they taught in banking school?
Well, first of all, I went to banking school in the last century. So I think the world was still black and white back then.
Yeah.
My answer to that is, look, if we're willing to give a 18-year-old kid money to go to college, no money down, who knows what that job is going to be. If we're willing to do that, why aren't we willing to give entrepreneurs money to start a business?
Interesting. That is actually a good point that I've heard that made before, and I feel like that this program, the 7A, has operated zero subsidy for most of the years, right? And so, should it be like, doesn't it make sense for the taxpayers to put a little bit of their own money into a program that could have just overwhelmingly positive impact to the economy by really unleashing small business?
Yeah, and I know you asked the answer, in my opinion, is yes. I know you asked the banking question. In banking school, they taught us the 5 C's.
Right.
We still teach that, and the first C is I amend that by saying the first C, character is the first C. So you have to meld the traditional analytical way to do that with what's going to happen. And then I think the conversation is, okay, how do we handle the losses? What is an appropriate level of losses, and what should we do? And that's a fair discussion. How much should the taxpayer subsidize that program? Up to now, SBA has been a zero subsidy program. Losses are covered by fees paid by the borrowers and the banks.
Amazing. I mean, even a surplus, I think, in some years, we're probably giving money to the government.
We are, but I don't think we want to spend an hour on that.
No.
Everyone's going to click off and go, well, that...
I know. Well, and we're about to get into the good stuff, but I want to ask you,
okay,
if you were going to write a book in 2020, what would it have been about?
The answer, and I'm still mulling it over, but there's a fascinating compare and contrast what we did to the Great Recession versus what we did during COVID. And that's what I would write about, what the solution was. And the history is still out, but I think a history needs to be written of what why PPP was so valuable to the economy and why it needed to be done.
The amount of work it takes to get an SBA loan to the finish line is insane. So when I get hit with an environmental wreck 2 weeks out from closing, let's just say I'm not happy. And I get it. It's the environment. The buyer should know what's going on, and there's huge liabilities for them and for us as a lender if we have to take back a contaminated property. So the SBA requires certain environmental due diligence. But I'm a BDO and I just want to close. I'm kidding. But when I do run into an environmental issue, I call Derek. Derek Azovsky is president of ORMS. ORMS manages the environmental due diligence process, so you don't have to. ORMS provides RSRAs, and they can order your phase ones through their network of environmental experts. And then when that report is complete, they make sure it was done right. And when there is a finding, they can help translate it into English and help you navigate the SBA's complex environmental guidelines. I recommend ORMS to all my friends, and I urge you to take further action and go to orms.com for more information. You know, I said we were going to get into the good stuff, and that's exactly where I want to go right now because, you know, you're a legend in this space. I mean, like I said, household name from the time I was, you know, just entering the industry. And Coleman, the company, Coleman Report, all the different business things you do for training and information for the SBA industry, it's an institution. I want to know how it got started in the first place.
I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I was stuck in banking. And being a banker and being an entrepreneur are very difficult to put together. There are entrepreneurial bankers, but they tend to be at the top level. And I always wanted to control my own destiny.
Did you ever think about actually going on that side and getting into the lending side or even brokering of SBA loans?
Yeah, I was a lender. That was my background. I worked for a bank. I ran a department. I ran a department at a community bank. I ran a team of BDOs. I was a sales manager for a team of BDOs for a small business lending company in Southern California. And I started Coleman 30 years ago in 1993.
You did that all before you started Coleman in 1993?
Yes. Yeah. I'm an old guy.
I mean, how are we going to pack all this into one episode? We're going to have to do a follow-up here. So what was the first thing you did? Was it like a website you put up where people could just go get news?
1993. There was no internet.
Oh, there wasn't?
I did a hard copy 8-page newsletter, mimeographed at Kinko's and put it in an envelope and put a stamp on it and mailed it out. And mailed out, got a list and mailed out to people saying, hey, subscribe to this. And that's how I got started. There was no email. There was no internet. There was no websites.
That's absolutely mind-blowing to me. So do you send that to SBA lenders?
Yes. And they sent me checks. It was good.
Oh, so you had a paid newsletter where you and you gave them information.
Yeah, we started at $395 a year.
Like a subscription?
Subscription. Okay. That's how I started.
Do you have any subscriptions currently that you sell?
Yeah.
What are they for?
We have specialty niches, SBA underwriting and closing, and SBA servicing and liquidation. We do a newsletter in California, small business lending.
And now it's emailed?
They're digital. They're email.
How else has the business kind of evolved over the years? I mean, I was going back into the archives. I saw some stuff you were doing around the 2012 mark, and you were uploading. The one thing I saw was an interview you did with, who's it, Lisa Riley, CIT? Who's the CIT?
Riley.
Chris Riley. Okay, yeah. And some interview around the time CIT was kind of going through bankruptcy, and you uploaded a phone call to YouTube.
Yes. I don't remember that, but if you say so, I believe it.
I mean, so when did you go from the written kind of content to the more kind of audio and visual content?
Basically, when everyone else was moving to the web, we started a website and we started putting news up on that. We kept the hard copy of the newsletter in place until probably 2018, fairly recently. And then we went all digital. Interesting.
Fast forward to today, and you guys are doing Coleman Report Live. You're doing a lot of content. Are you like finding that there's just a lot of content out there and it's harder to kind of like cut through?
Yes, our job is our mission is to take government documents and make them clear. Take regulations and to put it into context and put it into 8th grade level English that people can understand right away.
Yeah, no, that's a big job, but you do
And
a good job.
there's plenty of content out there that's relevant for our audience, and our audience are bankers and who make small business loans and SBA loans. That's our audience.
Well, you've been in part of the industry for many years, and I assume you become friends with a lot of people who are,
sure.
And you essentially cover a lot of these people. You're the only news site in SBA lending, right? So what was it like when you had to cover like the BankServe stuff? Like, because
that was tough. I was torn. Let me, and I'll talk about BankServe, but I was very upset. One of the things that came out of the Great Recession, I was very upset, and still am upset, and will always be upset, is the government chose to prosecute community bankers for the financial failings of Wall Street banks. Not one, maybe one Wall Street banker went to jail. Hundreds of community bank presidents went to jail for allegedly, while they were convicted, for violating the conditions of TARP financing, which is reporting to the government how you use these funds. And so I was very upset and still upset. There was one trial was just recently adjudicated, 12 years later, of what the government did on their selective prosecution. The too big to fail was Eric Holder, Attorney General, said, "Oh, they're too big to jail. We can't jail these guys." Careers were lost, lives were lost. I mean, people committed suicide. It was just absolutely horrible what the government did. So I have a very soft spot for that. BankServe was difficult to cover. I'd known Carrie Agee for 20 years. I'd been to Indianapolis. I did a training session in her office. She did webinars for us. And what happened to her was very difficult and challenging for her personally, for her family, and for her staff. What I resented in that, Carrie, the quote was, she was over her skis and she made mistakes. Fine. We all make mistakes. She had bad judgment. Fine. Should she have gotten 6 years in jail? 6 years in jail that's a tough sentence. What I resented in that thing is they went down the line and jailed 4 of her staff. That I thought was overreach. And yes, those people committed a crime they lied to SBA. They misrepresented the SBA. And that's a crime. But I thought that was overreach, and They ruined all those people's lives. And they to go down to an administrative assistant who's closing loans, where Carrie says, "Oh, tell SBA this," and she did that, and she got indicted and went to jail. That's pretty tough.
Well, when you put it in context of the '08 situation and how none of those people went to jail, that is just absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
So that's tough. So sometimes you have to, I guess, cover stories you don't want to cover, and that's part of journalism, I guess. Yeah,
and I didn't. Patrick Harrington of BLX was the same thing. He made some mistakes of judgment, and he got 10 years. And the thing that bothers me, look, if you're a fraudster and you're a bank president and you're stealing out of the vault and you're buying homes in the Bahamas and a private jet, or I don't know if this is a family show, but the common theme is drugs, sports cars, and stuff outside of marriage. We'll leave it at that. If you're into that, fine. Do your 10 years. But to jail people who made a mistake on a form, who misrepresented to SBA what this real situation was, who didn't take a dime, that's pretty rough.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. Well, okay. There is a journalism aspect to your business, right?
Sure.
I mean, that's part of it. And Delaney is doing like journalism and stuff, and you guys are coming in and and approaching it just like any journalist would.
Mhm.
Is that like, did you have to learn that after the fact? Because if you're from a banker, like there's rules that have to go along with that, right?
The answer is no, and that's a fair criticism of us. And I know you weren't critical of me, but I'll go there and say that's a fair criticism. But we report what I sort of common sense, and I want to be fair, so I don't report rumors. I'm going to make a statement. I've never reported a rumor, and I hear a lot of rumors. A lot of people say this, but I don't do that. I'm very aware of public figures. Our editorial philosophy is we do not report on civil servants at SBA.
Okay.
I don't, unless I have their express permission. I mean, we don't quote them or whatever. The only one is the highest ranking civil service, John Miller. But if he makes a public statement, it's in Puerto Rico, I'm going to report on it. But I'm not talking about John personally, and I don't, you know. So we try to be fair in terms of we do how I would want someone to report us. That's probably our standard.
Well, I mean, I think when I, look at it, it looks like what more professionally done than actual journalists in many
I'm not
cases.
going to go in. We don't have another hour for that either.
But
I don't.
But it's cool that you have like integrity and kind of rules, because I bet the rumor mill would get a lot of clicks.
Yeah, probably if you're appointed by the political appointee, all bets are off.
Yeah.
We'll if you're a political appointee, we'll do that. But I'm not going to. We are not going to report on civil service. I won't do that. I won't do that.
I'm gonna switch gears. Did you guys ever put on a conference or like a SBA industry conference?
Sure.
When did you last do that, and why did you stop?
That's a question. First of all, we weren't very good at it. Putting on, I call them on-site events versus live events, because the opposite of a live event is a dead event, and we've had some dead events. But we did events in Florida, and we've done them all over the country. But bluntly, we weren't very good at it. And the reason why is I cannot control the content. What I mean by that is we have speakers, and we have, hey, here's Ray. He's going to talk about processing equity injection for hotel loans. Well, and Ray gets up and he talks for 30 minutes, but I can't control what he says. And Ray could be the dullest speaker in the world, and we've had some very dull speakers. And that. So first of all, we didn't control the content. We've had some that drew well over 100, but I've scaled back on that. I want to concentrate on information, and not only that, but good information. That's what I want to do. The one event we do each year, we do a live event. You caught me. An on-site event about the SBA secondary market. It's a specialty niche. It's the only one out there. We do it one day in Washington, D.C. I have a partner on that, Bob Judge at Government Loan Solutions, and so we still do that.
Okay, that makes sense. So like you kind of want your name to be synonymous with like good quality, high quality information, and by doing events.
We'll sponsor the conferences. We'll promote them. I'm all for them. Mid-America, the regional conferences, they do a great job. Jennifer Blooming does a great job on her America East, Florida conferences, America West. Mid-America, they have a great group of volunteers of Texas bankers. So there's very excellent conferences out there. And first of all, so I don't want to compete with them. I can't compete with them. They do a better job than I do.
Well, I've been to a couple of your, what are we calling them again? On-site events. I have actually an award here.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
What is this? BDO of the Year, 2018.
Right. Yeah,
that's yours.
That's not really an event.
Well, there was also SBA University, the one and only.
We did that.
I was at that, and I guess that would be it. But I've been to different events that you've been at as well, so that's cool. Let me ask you this: was there a pivot point? Was there a moment looking back in your business where you had to make a big pivot or anything like that?
That's a great question. As a businessman, I made a comment once that every quarter I was faced with a decision that if I made the wrong decision, I would be out of business. That probably still applies, but if you look back at the history, when I started in 93, I was a typical small business person, no capital, operating on a shoestring. And I got in and the world changed. All of a sudden, we're sending out this paper newsletter, and something called the internet was coming along. And I was involved with the trade group, and I went to this conference, and the speaker got up and said, by the way, you're all going to be out of business because the internet's going to give all your stuff away for free. That got my attention. But Ray, then the next person got up and said, by the way, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but the next event you go to, get everyone's business card. They're starting to put something now called an email, and they're putting all their emails on their business cards. Click those and put them in a database. I think you could use that. That's how we started our email newsletter. So I love the question because in context, what I do today is nowhere near, it doesn't even resemble what I did 30 years ago. And I would say that's true well, I'll turn it around on you. How you operate today as a BDO isn't what you did 15 years ago.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed BDO on this podcast recently who says they get 99% of their business from LinkedIn, which no one was on there 15 years ago doing that type of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that statement. Yeah.
And if we were at a live event, damn it, I did it. In-person event, in our industry, and I asked the question to the audience, raise your hand if you get Bob Coleman's emails. How many hands do you think would go up?
The better question is, how many of you have put me on the spam list? No, I'm very proud of the fact. I think our brand is well known. I'm very religious about taking care of our brand. I want quality content. I'm also very sensitive. I don't want to send out unsolicited email. So I would hope that the people would raise their hands, say, how many of you
opted in?
Are satisfied? No Coleman. And are satisfied with, are you getting emails or you're not getting emails, but Coleman, and they would all raise their hands. So I don't want to send emails to people who don't want them. It's wasted their time and it's waste of my money. I don't want to do that.
What's your favorite part about being like the go-to source of information in the industry?
That's a great question. I enjoy it. I enjoy doing something that no one else is doing. In terms of our editorial philosophy is we will cover stuff no one else does. Specifically, if it's in the Wall Street Journal, we don't write about it. You will not see us write about economic conditions. We're totally bipartisan. We don't even, we're not political, and a lot of people praise us for that. So, but we could take on a subject as, for example, today, the Inspector General came out with a report on economic injury, disaster loans, EIDL loans, criticizing SBA about refusing to collect loans that are delinquent of balances less than $100,000. People may talk about that, but no one's going to write an article about that and why that's important. So we can take very, very specific stuff, go down that rabbit hole and say, hey, and then tell the banker, this is what this means, and this is why it's important to you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things, like I've been going to your website, probably daily for like the past decade, to where it's just one of those habits like that people get, like, doing the Wordle every day. And it just must be so cool to have made such an impact in the industry.
Thank you.
So do you have any plans for the business, like as it continues to evolve? Are you going to be injecting it with AI anytime soon?
I made a statement. Great question. I made a statement that said, I believe AI is going to change my business the way the internet did. I can't back that up. It's a gut feel, but I think AI is extremely interesting. I've played around with it in its early stages, and the first thing we've adapted is we want to make sure our stuff does not look like AI. And we're all to the point now when we read something, oh, that's AI generated. So the first takeaway is we want to make sure it doesn't look like AI. But there's some fascinating stuff going in there that I don't fully understand it, other than it is transformative and it needs to be addressed or looked into. There's something there. I'm not smart enough yet to tell you what it is.
Well, and I'm the same way. And, it's funny. The folks at Lumos, who you have now a partnership with, right? They use it in their business. What is that? That's having to do with the SBA data, and
that's the data.
So what are you guys doing together? What's the partnership?
In the past, we had taken the SBA data and we had compiled it, and we had calculated charge-off rates and charge-off rates by number and by dollar amount, and put that in a spreadsheet and converted that to a PDF and sold that. The next generation of that is to take that information and do a predictive model, which I don't have the skill set to, and that's an entirely different new business line. I thought long and hard about it, and then I found out about Lumos, and that's what they did, and it's just easier for me. Hey, I'll tell you what, you guys crunch it, I'll sell it, and that's where we are.
Oh, that makes sense. I like that.
Because they know what they're doing, and I'm smart enough to know is that what we're doing today is not going to be acceptable 3 years down the line.
Yeah, no, those are some sharp folks, and I think I like the way they're displaying the data too. So it's like easier to kind of digest.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's play a little game here. It's a fill in the blank. Fill in the blank. The SBA industry has gotten too blank.
Too much bad press.
Because of the PPP stuff. Yeah. Well, so that whole situation is like, I could have easily called that. Like at the time I was like, yeah, we just need to get the money out the door.
No, everyone called it.
Right?
They said up front, there's going to be fraud. Okay, so we're going to set money aside to go after the people who commit fraud. Now, everyone knew it was going to happen, but it's still acceptable based on the good. The benefit outweighed the negative.
I like what you said in the beginning about putting things into context from a historical perspective. The SBA rolled out sweeping changes to their beloved 7A program this year. And a lot of those changes, as you probably know better than anyone, is, different. It's do what you do and small loans. That's kind of some of the big takeaways. Like, so put those changes, because everyone seems like really surprised by a lot of the stuff in there, but like in context, are these changes really as surprising and as sweeping as people are saying?
The changes are not surprising that they were telegraphed. While they may appear to be sweeping, they may not necessarily be. Remember, the SOP is a guide. The lender still has control of what loans to approve and how to structure the loans and what covenants they want. So when SBA says on loans less than $500,000, we don't care about collateral, the lender can say, fine, but I want collateral. SBA can say, you don't have to worry about franchise eligibility. The lender can still say, you know what? I'm going to go through this, and we're going to do our own analysis of how this franchise looks. And in our opinion, are they a small business lender? The SBA can say, don't worry about a loan authorization. The lender can say, well, no, we still are comfortable doing it. So these are guidelines. The lender doesn't have to, just because SBA says you don't have to do that, the lender says, oh, then we have to do it. Because the lenders are also have another master, which is the regulator. And the regulator may say, how come you're not taking collateral on this loan? How come you're not doing this type of analysis on this loan? They say, well, SBA says we don't have to. And the regulator say, well, that's fine, but we say you have to. So I don't get too excited about that stuff. Look, bankers are conservative. There's checklists. They want to know how to do things. And I understand all that. But in this situation, it's the SOP is a floor, and the lender can add on whatever parameters they want. Classic one's equity injection. SBA says we can go down to 10% equity injection, but lender says no. If I'm doing a hotel ground up construction, I want to have 33%. That's the lender's prerogative. It's not SBA's.
But why would the SBA remove like these guardrails? Like for example,
that's a great question. I'm sorry, I cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
That's a great question. They're not removing the guardrails. They're allowing the lender to do what you do. In other words, let the lenders lend. Lenders know how to lend money. That's what they do. And SBA, my take on this is they're saying, okay, we're not going to give these guardrails to lenders. We're going to tell them, be a prudent lender. Do what you do on your loans. Do the same thing for SBA. If you're going to take collateral on a $150,000 non-SBA loan, then you have to do it on an SBA loan. So I like the fact that they're removing these restrictions that are simply an impediment for what? Getting access to capital. If they have so many rules that, we got to do this because it's SBA, every time you add a regulation or rule, you're cutting off potential deals. So that's, again, I tend to be positive on that. And I like the fact that there's as little rules as possible. Follow the spirit of the program. Do what you do on their loans. Be a good SBA citizen, and you're going to be fine.
Okay, well, but
there's always a but.
Well, if this program came out on August 1, brand new program, I think everyone would be super excited about it and be like, wow, this is good, and there's not a lot of red tape. But the problem, I think, is that most people that have been doing this have been doing it for a long time, and they know too much. And I think that's kind of the problem we're facing, which is like the industry is just like, they're not taking it at face value. They're saying, well, we're still going to do what we've been doing. We don't really trust that if we, do these things that are very different, that we're going to have our guarantees honored or pass these audits or whatever.
Well, see, I think that's a bad argument. It's in the SOP. If you follow the SOP, they're going to honor the guarantee. So, and SBA has been around for all these years because at the end of the day, they honor 97% of the guarantees or in full. So, yeah, if you make a mistake, if you're supposed to take a piece of collateral and you don't take collateral, expect a repair. If you make a loan to someone who's ineligible, expect a denial of the guarantee. If you make a loan and you put it in your credit memo on how your analysis is that Bob and Ray's Sandwich Shop is a new franchise and they're opening up their 5th location, that that's obviously a small business because we have all their franchise information. We can combine them and we know that's a small business, as opposed to going through this checklist. Registered, have SBA approve it. If you're a lender, you should be smarter to figure out, we're going to read the franchise disclosure statement. We're going to analyze the risk and we'll make the loan based on that, not if SBA says we can. So I don't have too much of a problem with those guidelines. The real problem is, and I'm going to interrupt for your next question, is, well, what about the bad actors? Yes, we've always had bad actors in the business, and they will take advantage of it. And that's what SBA should be focused on, is focusing on those bad actors. SBA has access to all this wonderful data, and the data will tell you very quickly, well, here we have a lender that did 7 loans last year to franchises, and this year they're doing 57 loans to franchises. That doesn't mean those are bad loans. It's simply a flag to indicate, well, let's find out what's going on here.
Well, Bob, you know what? That's a good point. And we're running out on time, so I'm going to kind of wrap this thing up here a little bit. And, what can I say? You've done it all. You've been on the lending side. You've wrote a book. I think you were even keynoting, on the SBA circuit at one point, right? Were you keynoting at conferences?
Yes.
You have the #1 news site in the SBA industry, go-to place for training, information, all that stuff. I mean, what haven't you done? Let me ask you, what haven't you done? What's next for Bob?
I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm not going to retire. I'm a techie. I want to embrace these new technologies. And I want to embrace ways to get content and put it in formats that people can understand quickly and in the way they want to consume it.
When you've been doing this as long as you've been doing it, does legacy come into play? Do you ever think about, legacy? What do you want your legacy to be in this industry?
I don't. No, I don't. The answer is no. I don't care about legacy. I look at the list. No, I don't. What I care about is family. I care about my kids. I care about my grandkids. I want to make sure that whatever I can do to make their life easier, I will do. That I will do. But in terms of 100 years from now, I don't think anybody's going to be talking about Bob Coleman, and I hate to say it, Ray Drew as well.
Well, you know what? They're gonna find this episode.
There you go. They go, what the hell are these old gold guys? Hey, look at that funny guy. Look what he's wearing.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, talk about the mailing, going to email, going to internet, going to AI. Who knows where we'll be in 100 years, man? That's gonna be crazy.
I will tell you that this is. I like to think I am a smart person tracking technology. How technology is changing so quickly, it passes. We're not aware of it. And technology is changing so quickly. You mentioned AI, but everything else in terms of dashboards for doing business and smartphones and what we can do, and the faster and better uses of that. And we fail to realize that from time to time. So I love playing with that stuff and seeing what's new and playing around with it.
Well, I look forward to, attending a conference with you one day in the metaverse. So
there you go.
Bob Coleman, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, Ray, thank you very much for inviting me. I enjoyed reconnecting and enjoyed the conversation.
All right, that's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode of the Art of SBA Lending. And if you have any feedback or suggestions, email me at ray@artofsba.com. Until next time, ta-ta.